Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Cynthia.
And I'm Dina.
And this is another episode of Out of the Fold. Today we are going to be speaking about something that one of our viewers commented, a change that we did not speak about, and that was the reduced hour, not the reduced hours, but that we're no longer required to track hours.
Right.
And by we, I still include myself, but I disassociated myself, so I'm no longer a Jehovah Witnesses. But Jehovah Witnesses are no longer required to track their hours.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a big change because, you know, everything as far as their ministry goes or preaching where it goes was based off of tracking their time. Like how long they stood talking to someone, all the Bible studies, like how long they lasted out in the field service, which is what they would call going door to door preaching.
Exactly.
They would track all that time. So
and they would hound us for those hours, girl.
Yeah, I remember they would make us write at the end of the month, right? Like
yeah.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be so difficult for you. Like you were supposed to keep track on a little log. But it was such a nuisance for me, to be honest. Like I always did it last minute.
Yeah.
And at some point I just stopped handing it in because it was just so difficult to track, especially when Daniela was born. Since she was in the hospital so much.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have the time.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure a lot of people did the same. Like it was such a hassle, like you said, to track, and I'm sure a lot of people lied on just make up some numbers real quick, and I feel like also that's people would feel guilty if they didn't have enough hours, and it's just another thing to feel guilty about, you know, like, oh, I didn't preach enough this month or whatever.
I did. I know I did. So you're not far from the truth. I really did carry a lot of guilt because I always felt like I was not doing enough. And sometimes turning it in, or practically every time for me personally, because of the minimal amount that I would do, the hours were so few, that I would feel guilty and bad about it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I remember my mom would like whenever she would go through whatever health issues she was going through and she wasn't able to get out there like she wanted to, she would say how she felt bad about it. And so I'm like, don't feel bad.
Whatever.
Right. This was when I was a lot younger, but yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just another tactic that the religion uses on people, that, you know, another guilt tactic, is keeping track of time. So
yeah, but the real issue here is that I found out through research that it wasn't a lovingly provision by the headquarters to ask publishers to not track hours. It was the result of a lawsuit. So I was very shocked by that, to discover that. So it turns out that, you know, that big lawsuit that they had back and forth with Norway. So it turns out that Norway said it revoked their license, said, hey, there are some things that you do in your religion that break some labor laws and breaks other laws amongst these labor laws. Yeah. And so we're revoking your license, we're not going to give it to you. And one of them was hours, logging hours.
Wow.
I know.
That's crazy.
It is very crazy. So it turns out that they said, look, adults who want to volunteer their time, that's up to them. We can't do anything about that. But you have children who are publishers. And that's where it gets tricky. Yeah. Right? Children need to be taken by their parents to field service. Okay. A child doesn't always want to go out in service. You can't stand here and tell me that a child constantly wants to be preaching. Right? So they're like, when you're asking minors to track hours, when you have these exorbitant requirements and all this time that needs to be donated, and even though you're not setting a fixed number for some of them, it's still a requirement. And to us, that is breaking child labor laws. You're asking them to work, but you're not paying them. They're not getting paid for it. So that was basically how this all started. And so they first lost, right? The first appeal, they lost. As a part of the second round, there were many other issues that needed to be addressed in this lawsuit, but which, interestingly enough, that could be another topic for another day. Many of the changes that we discussed last week came as a result of the lawsuit from Norway because they wanted this tax exemption so badly.
Yeah, because they lost their tax exemption from that lawsuit.
That is correct.
And
That is correct. Which you were arguing, hey, they're losing money, and I'm like, how are they doing that? But Norway is a big reveal as to just how huge this tax exemption is. I think it's like a few $1 million.
Wow.
You know, that's
crazy.
Yeah, that's serious money there. So basically, that's what happened. They, in order for them to appease the courts, part of the arrangement that they did and they made was like, hey, so we're not going to require that they track their hours anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So that appeases the courts. How do you implement that change though? At a wide scale, because you can't have Norway be the only one that doesn't track hours. Word will get around and gets around. So what they did is they went back and said, hey, let's implement this as a worldwide change. Yeah. Right? Like a lovingly provision. We know it's a lot. We don't want to put that burden on you. And they were subtle. And it went unnoticed by many people who didn't really know what was going on. But it's out there. And I encourage people to go to the actual lawsuit. It's public information, and go access the file. And you would be surprised by a lot of the things that were cons that the state brought up, and how they the organization went around and turned it into pros, or just things that were out of the question because they adjusted their teachings, methodologies.
And I mean, that doesn't surprise me because, it's interesting because they make these changes and they come up with, and I don't know did you ever find out what they said in the congregation, I guess, when they announced, like, what the reasoning was for that?
I was out by that time, but you know how it's always sold to us as a lovingly provision.
Right. It's always something
that messes with your psyche, right? Something that says, we do this because we love you.
Right. And it's so easily explained. They explain it in a way where people are like, oh, well, of course, yes.
Thank you so much.
Exactly.
You're so thoughtful.
And I'm sure a lot of witnesses are relieved to not have to track time anymore, because it's so like you just mentioned earlier, it's such a
time consuming.
It's
put a mental strain on us. But let's go back to these children. Because Norway was really concerned about the children, even the disfellowship. The disfellowship.
That was a big part of it. I think that was, I don't know if that was a separate lawsuit or if that was part of
it. It was a part of it. They were like, hey, look, hours, child labor laws, you're also the shunning, you're traumatizing these children. Like, once again, they're like, adults are adults. I could care less what an adult wants to willingly do, but children, minors, that's where it gets tricky. And that's where I need to step in and protect that population. So, and the biggest thing also is this alarm was raised by a circuit overseer.
Wow.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yes, now you know. It's all available on the public records, but it was a circuit overseer. Their name is not disclosed, but they have to verify this information. So, I mean, you know, they're not going to put something out there that is not true.
Yeah.
So it was a circuit overseer that was the first one to ring the alarm and say, hey, something is not correct. It looks like he witnessed firsthand the amount of trauma that these kids were going through, and he just felt like it was not right. So disfellowshipping or disassociation was another topic that was covered under that lawsuit as well. So they basically said, hey, that's causing trauma, that's breaking up families, this is when a child needs their parents the most. And in reality, we don't even think children should get baptized, right? It's just, they're just too young.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's a lot of times children are they're just coerced into believing that they should get baptized. It's not really a decision they're making. It's their parents.
And you get excited, yeah, right? You
right.
get, I mean, the kids, I remember like 8, 9-year-olds. I don't know if you ever witnessed that, but tiny little kids like being escorted by their mothers up there. And I saw something fundamentally wrong with that. I think it's since it took me so long to get baptized until I was like in my 30s that I'm like, wow, I never allowed my children to even contemplate that when we were active.
Yeah, I think that's normal because, I mean, a child, they still have so much to learn, so much to grow up and mature, and it's like you want them to, like, since I'm not even in this religion at all, I just feel like what I tell my kids, like, just learn as much as you can so that you can make the best decision for yourself.
Informed decisions.
Exactly. And I don't think a child is really they don't have the mental capacity to really, you know, make those type of judgments. I mean, it could seem like, you know,
especially when there's such harsh consequences.
Exactly.
The consequences of not abiding by godly standards when you are a Jehovah Witness.
Right.
They are heavy.
And that's really the bulk of it. Like, that's really the bottom line is the consequences that people go through. Like, that's why it's inappropriate for a child. Because if they for whatever reason get disfellowship, then now what? Nobody's gonna talk to them.
Exactly.
So what is that gonna?
And their decision was just emotionally based in the beginning, right? They don't have the rationale. They just see it as a cool thing and as an exciting thing, and there is a hype to it, right? And then you just want to go out in service and preach, and everybody's commending you, but that wears off.
Yeah.
It wears off.
It wears off.
And then let's say that happens when you're in elementary or middle school.
Yeah.
You know that
you're gonna grow up and people are just
you're gonna probably try to make friends outside of the organization, which is things that can get you disfellowship. You know, if you keep on insisting on having friends outside of the organization. What else? Maybe, you know, they're attracted to somebody and want to get married.
Yeah, just regular stuff that young kids and teenagers go through, you know, like you said, like as soon as they go to school, they're going to be around other kids, they're going to have their own friends, their jobs that they work, if they go off to college. So, I mean, you know.
They can't go. What are you talking about?
Well, you know, it's interesting.
You can't go to college.
Now that what I've noticed is that, I guess within recent years, a lot more kids are going to college only because the cost of living. You can't get away with a high school diploma anymore. Like a lot of kids, they have to
seek higher education.
Yeah, a lot of them do. Compared to like us when I was a teenager. Yeah,
which limited a lot of our opportunities as well. Yes. I know I have only an associate's degree.
Yeah,
and so I had to work triple hard to become an analyst, and work 3 times as more than the person that did have a bachelor's degree. And so yeah, it's very interesting that they are now. Tina got a phone call. It's very interesting that now these changes are being made. They're probably being sold as new enlightenment or lovingly provisions, but we know. Norway has a lot to do with that, which I'm grateful for, because like we were discussing before that, technology has made so many resources available to us, and people can't lie to you anymore, right? You can get on your phone and look it up and go to those public records and see what really went on. Another thing is that when I was reading through the documentation, going back to what Norway was saying about kids and being disfellowshipped and that causing trauma, another thing, that they say it out loud from the platform. They read it out loud, the announcement. And so they're like, that is embarrassing, humiliating. That's so traumatic for a child. So in Norway, they said, you can't do that here. That's not godly. That is not nice, basically.
Yeah.
And so we need to protect the emotional welfare of these minors. In Norway, they are not allowed to announce a minor who has that and say that they have been disfellowshipped or anything like that. They're censored in private. You can go and look it up as well as part of the resolutions. They're censored in private. Their parent has to be present. You know that before they would, if we did, like I know if we did something that wasn't up to par, they would say, oh, the elders need to talk to you. And then they would separate you from your parent and speak to you privately. In Norway, you cannot do that. They're like, no. A parent has to be present at all times.
Just like with anything else, like school or anywhere else. Yeah, a minor is a minor. They need their parent present.
Exactly. And so the parents need to be present, and they're like, a person commits if a minor commits a mistake, you're not going to disfellowship them like immediately. They're going to go through like a step-by-step program of rehab, godly, spiritual rehab, before you even take that step. So I don't know exactly how it is in the United States, but those are the laws that were drafted, the new implementations that were made, and they did get their license. They did, once they had made all those adjustments, they put it in writing. I mean, they were given their tax exemption.
Yeah.
And so they won. And when I was reading some of the arguments made by the attorneys, which are also Jehovah's Witnesses, Dina, I was floored, because one of them said in the arguments, because when you're in court, there's somebody typing. And so he said in the recorded statement, he said, well, that can basically something to the effect of that can be traumatic for a child, but that's not our fault. That's the fault of the parent for allowing them to get baptized in the first place, because yes, they are too young. And I'm like,
yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah, they encourage you to get baptized, and then as soon as they stand up on court and have to testify for something, now all of a sudden they're innocent. They don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. It wasn't their fault.
Right.
It was shame on you.
Right.
The parent.
Which is another reason to not trust any of it's because that they're only looking out for themselves. That's a clear demonstration of them only looking out for themselves.
Yes.
And their money.
And lying.
And straight up lying, exactly.
Because no way, Jehovah's Witnesses don't lie, right? But they encourage it, because it wasn't encouraged, you wouldn't have 8, 9, 12, 13, 15-year-olds getting baptized.
Right.
There should be some regulations in place that say, hey, or a regulation in place that says, hey, so, kids under the age of 18 are discouraged from getting baptized.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. That's how you take control over the situation. You don't compromise your moral integrity, right? Because you set forth the example and the standard, right? Saying you acknowledge that they're immature, like you said, they don't have the mental capacity yet. They're basing it on their emotions. Parents should not condone it. They should just teach them in the ways until they're ready and they're mature enough to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it took a lawsuit for them to make those changes, but they made those changes because of the consequences they had to face, not because they care about
the financial consequences. Which, back to, because Dina and I were constantly like sending each other articles and stuff throughout the week. That article, that podcast that you showed me, that they were talking about the how do you call it, the governing body member that was removed. That gentleman that they were interviewing in one of those podcasts that you sent me, his biggest argument is, hey, we cannot go back on speaking to this fellowship. That's just disfellowship people. That's like our number one rule. If we alter that in any way, we're going to lose credibility. And so that was a big point of contention, because he did not want to sign off on that.
Yeah.
But it looks like the majority won.
That's crazy.
And Norway.
Norway won again.
Norway won. And brother, is it Anthony? I think his name is Anthony.
I don't know. I forgot. I have to go back and look. But yeah.
Wow. But yeah, he got voted out.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. So, if you're watching this, our podcast for the first time, and you know of somebody who is probably contemplating getting baptized and they're a minor, please have their parents go and read up on the lawsuit and what was said. You're going to be surprised when they themselves acknowledge that children should not be getting baptized. And hopefully they can get discouraged from that. I'm not saying that they have to stop attending, but just make the decision when they're informed adults. Yeah,
I feel like that's the best thing to do. I mean, that's like we said earlier, it comes with such a hefty consequence if they do get disfellowshipped. So like if you are grown up making that decision, it's easier to go through those consequences instead of a child or a minor. Exactly, because you're aware that there will be major consequence to pay as a result of not abiding by these rules. And lastly, it was not a lovingly provision. It is not, first of all, when it comes to hours and not reporting, it's not to reduce the burden from the publishers. It's actually a tactic that was employed in order to appease the courts. And so beware. Just a man-made religion. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.